If we look at the global history, all the wars have been preceded by a trade war. Pattern is very similar to what happened before World War I and World War II. Trump boasts of being a great negotiator, and negotiators do not want to get into conflicts. More than 75 countries have already lined up to discuss various bilateral trade agreements.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that your smartphone is 20% more expensive, your medicines cost more, and that car that you have been saving for is out of reach. Dramatic, right? But that's what could be coming with Donald Trump's new tariff policy. Trump has rolled out a 10% universal tariff on all imports, with even higher tariffs on goods imported from China, Mexico, and other countries. Today, we are breaking down what this means for the global economy, the US, and countries like India. And helping us do that is Professor VP Singh, who is an economist and an expert in international trade and macroeconomics. Donald Trump has called this move Liberation Day for the US economy with introducing 10% universal tariff for all imports and with even higher tariffs on China especially. So what do you think Donald Trump is aiming for with this universal tariff policy, and how unprecedented or unusual is this move in the global trade history?
So, tariffs are not unusual in the global trade history, and they've been there always. And only difference is that US putting in tariffs
Mhm.
is something which is not frequent.
Okay.
Uh, India has been maintaining very high tariff rates till the pre-liberalization era, and believe me, it didn't have a good impact. If we look at the global history, all the wars have been preceded by a trade war. Countries tend to raise tariffs, and because of that, trade suffers. When trade suffers, then there will be overproduction in some cases, lack of employment that creates problem in the world, and that it reduces intolerance, which leads to invasions. So that's how the pattern has been. Let us see how things are different this time.
Okay, but China even hit back with a 125% tariff on US goods, and European Union is also preparing for the countermeasures. So, do you think we are on the edge of a full scale trade war, and how do you see it?
Although the pattern is very similar to what happened before World War I and World War II. Even in World War II, it was US raised the tariffs by around 20% on around 20,000 items.
Mhm.
And this was followed by other countries. Canada, the most loyal country to US, that also increased tariffs against us. And ultimately, in next, let's say these tariffs, Smoot-Hawley tariff came in 1930. And then there was Great Depression till 33, 34. The countries tried to normalize, but eventually it led to World War II. Something similar is happening now also. US raised the tariffs, and then we see China has retaliated, Canada has retaliated, EU is also into the same kind of a thing.
Right.
So all those patterns are very similar, but I feel there is quite a lot of difference here. Trump boasts of being a great negotiator,
Hmm.
and negotiators do not want to get into conflicts.
Right.
So this seems to be largely political statements which are being made, and it may coerce the countries to come and have bilateral trade agreements signed with US, and the trade will begin. So the world may not see too much of multilateral trade, but bilateral trade is expected to increase.
Okay, so do you think that there are going to be more negotiations going forward? And
Oh yes. So we saw a statement from Trump that more than 75 countries have already lined up
okay,
to discuss various bilateral trade agreements.
Mhm.
So he is going to be pretty quick with that, and the trade will resume.
Why do you think he might have done this? Because living tariffs on, let's say, a couple of countries who are, the manufacturing hub or manufacturing power of the world, let's say China. So then it makes sense to, maybe some way harm the Chinese exports or not, import a lot of goods from China. But if all countries retaliate and all countries levy heavy taxes, does that not just harm the, middle class of the, or let's say the common man? Because eventually what will happen is, if every country is levying heavy tariffs, then it will eventually make the goods expensive and worldwide expensive for all the countries. So in this case, I think more than the at the macro level, I think at the micro level, the common man will suffer with the inflation all around the world.
Oh, that's right. And this is basic economics. Trump understands this very well. The media, the other people, they are wanting to explain various consequences of high tariff barriers to Trump. He is too smart for that. He doesn't need to see the videos of Ronald Reagan or Milton Friedman and other economists. He knows pretty well what he's doing. At the same time, he does not want to harm the interest of the people of the country, of India. For other countries, he doesn't care much, but he knows that if US has to do well, there have to be some set of countries they should also be doing well.
Hmm. And what are
Uh,
these countries?
well, that time will tell. He's been telling everybody as a friend. So India is a friend. So just now he said China is also a friend. Xi Jinping is a friend. So we don't know, but largely things seem to be favorable towards India.
Okay. And some experts have also started to call this as a move towards West versus Rest economic order. So do you think this is going to happen? And do you think the trade economics will, have a more fragmented blocks of West versus Rest?
No, no, this is not West versus Rest. Slightly difficult at this juncture because we see a lot of things developing. Look at uh, the South Asia region. South Asian region, we saw that Bangladesh has been in turmoil. Initially, people said that Muhammad Yunus is US representative there as the prime minister. Now we see Muhammad Yunus is aligning more with China. And then we saw their defense minister, no, not defense minister, one of the army generals, one of the top defense person, he visited Russia last week or so. And now we see Russian frigates, Russian naval ships coming near Bangladesh, showing interest with Indonesia. So now when we say West, so are we including Russia in that? So it may be on the western side from us, but it is not really
The West.
in the West.
Yeah.
In the West, we've been looking at France, UK, Germany, US. But today, US, UK, France, Italy, Germany, they seem to be on loggerheads. They are not same. So West versus Rest, it is rhyming, but it is, I don't think it is correct.
Let me simplify this question for you. Let's say if the entire world was to reunite and sideline USA, just USA, not the West. Do you think this is possible and this can be done? And can all countries survive without USA, and can USA survive without all the countries?
The amount of buying power that US has, the world requires it.
And power in terms of, like, what sort of power are we talking? Economic power?
Yeah. So look at China's productive facility.
Hmm.
Who does it produces for? Is it for China? They produce for European Union. They produce for US to a very large extent. They produce for India.
India as well, yeah. Wherever most of the population or highest density of population is.
So if US does not buy things from China,
Mhm.
then who is going to replace that kind of a buyer for China? No one.
True.
India has a golden opportunity to align with US
Hmm.
and rather replace China.
Right.
China could be in a fix into a big problem
Hmm.
coming, but US will not be sidelined, not at all.
And do you think this entire strategy was somehow meant to, hurt Chinese exports or the
Of
Chinese
course,
economy?
of course. because for quite some time, US has represented this unipolar world. This was at top.
Hmm.
And that's what Trump says, that I want to make America great again.
Hmm.
That means it is not great anymore.
Right.
Why is it not great anymore? So the biggest challenge or threat comes from China. Look at how US position in this financial system or economic system of the world has emerged. There was a time when they were very strong on manufacturing. After the First World War, they became almost the richest economy.
Right.
After the Second World War, they consolidated further.
Right.
There was so much of destruction in the world. The richest economies like France and England, they also needed money. They also needed huge amount of money for reconstruction. So that is the time when dollar started dominating the global trade. Countries did not have gold, so they started taking help of dollar. So as dollar gained dominance, US also gained the capability of printing as many dollars, because everybody in the world required dollars.
Right.
Now, in order to keep the countries together, so US started transferring industries to rest of the world. So the company will be headquartered in US, but production facilities will be elsewhere. This way, the cost of production was also cheaper, and it led to higher corporate profits for the companies.
Right.
So gradually, the manufacturing started moving away from US. Since they could print any amount of dollars, so importing a lot of goods on basis of dollars was not that big a problem.
Right.
For several years, US has maintained a trade deficit, buying from other countries. Now what has happened is that gradually the dollar is also threatened. This move of de-dollarization and China emerging as a challenger, although there is no real threat at present, but there is a resurgence of yuan. It has already built a network with some Middle East countries and Southeast Asian countries where they can get into internal trade and not involve dollar. So that means dollar demand will come down. If dollar demand comes down, so US capacity to print dollars will also come down.
Right.
US doesn't want this to happen.
Right.
So it has to do something drastic to stop China from generating such kind of interest among rest of the countries that dollar can be sidelined. So look at the thing. So US first sacrifices, in a way, the manufacturing potential.
Right.
It gets into some high-end production, runs trade deficit, maintains very strong dollar so that others can export. And now dollar itself is getting threatened.
Right.
So Trump has to save his turf.
In our last podcast as well, we discussed that yuan cannot replace dollar as a universally accepted currency. So, do you think that is, that situation somehow has changed and now dollar is threatened?
Dollar is threatened in a way that it will not get as much importance.
Okay. The relevance.
It is very natural. Human psychology. Today, if I'm getting a lot of importance from, let's say, 10 people.
Right.
Tomorrow, 2 out of them do not give me that importance. I don't like it.
Right. Makes sense.
Dollar dominance is what Trump is wanting to achieve.
US can't, let go.
It cannot let go.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And in all this chaos, we have institutions like World Trade Organization, who once used to be very powerful but are now sidelined. So, do you believe that these organizations have some relevance or power in the, to influence in the all this global trade tension?
All individuals have a life. All organizations have a life. WTO emerged during that time when there used to be huge trade restrictions. Capital will not flow among countries, and hence it was not being used efficiently. Gradually, the organization has grown large. Countries have benefited. But as I said, everything is time specific. WTO and trade integration has gone beyond the intended benefits, I think.
Okay.
In economics, there is a concept called diseconomies of scale. Something that becomes too big, then it starts withering down. WTO has reached that space. The benefits which countries had to take from trade, especially the powerful countries, that benefit is not getting accrued to them.
Okay.
So they would not let this organization live for long.
Oh. So these organizations can also be dissolved.
They will automatically get dissolved. If each country is raising tariff against other, then where is the relevance of WTO?
Right.
China says that it will go to WTO, complain to WTO, but you've also raised tariff by 125%.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And you also mentioned that after the Second World War, America let go of their manufacturing power and started importing. But Donald Trump says that this move is to bring back the American manufacturing and reducing the trade deficit and maybe lowering the food prices as well. So do you think, but otherwise, the researchers from MIT and World Bank suggest otherwise. So what do you think about the numbers that, or are you aligned with what Trump says, or do you support the numbers that comes from the researchers from MIT and World Bank?
So as I had mentioned earlier, that there will be a lot of bilateral trades, which means relevance of WTO will be lesser.
Okay.
Which also means that with bilateral trades, US will be able to sideline China to a large extent.
Okay.
For instance, we saw the deal negotiation with Ukraine. Why is US persisting on a deal with Ukraine? Ukraine has a reasonably good reserves of rare metals,
Okay.
rare earth metals, which is required for robotics, which is required for drones, which is required for electric vehicles. China has almost 70% of the world's capacity in that.
Okay.
Tomorrow, if China stops exporting rare earth metals, then what do US companies do now? So they have to rely on someone else. So that is why Trump is wanting to desperately do a deal with Ukraine. It is ready to shake hands with Russia. It is ready to negotiate a deal with India. India has third largest reserves of rare earth metals. So these bilateral trades are going to determine whether US will be able to come back into that kind of a power or not. The manufacturing may not actually come back to US.
Okay.
When the market is not there, so what will they produce? And if they produce less, the infrastructure which it has created will not be utilized properly. Inefficient usage of fixed investment, fixed resources will lead to higher average costs. And China will lose its competency in the foreign market on two grounds. Number one, some countries will just not import because of high tariff given US instructions.
Right.
And when the capacity of production being utilized is lower, so average cost will go up, which will make Chinese goods incompetent in the foreign market.
Understood.
This is what probably Trump is targeting at.
Okay.
And this is very sound economics.
Okay.
The huge infrastructure that China has created, which it thought is its competitive advantage, US is wanting to kill that competitive advantage.
Some even say that Donald Trump stands to personally benefit from this US tariff policy by, from this market drop that this has triggered, and he's trying to, benefit personally from these, market trade-offs and all that. So what do you think about that?
No, that is largely media masala for entertainment. I don't think there is any iota of truth in this.
Okay.
Because US president is the strongest person, and there are many more things through which they can earn a fortune for themselves.
Okay. And if you were to, explain to the common man in a very layman language, if not personal benefits, what could be that one move that or one strategy that he has in mind to doing like for doing all of this?
Make China incompetitive.
Okay.
So China's huge manufacturing power should actually come as disadvantage to China.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, he is going to sign bilateral deals with large number of companies, large number of countries,
Mm-hmm.
and reduce the market for China, make it inefficient.
All right. And let's zoom out a bit. Over the past few years, or the past actually a lot of years, US external debt has been piled up a lot. And was this a very strategic move or was it just unplanned spending? And does this have any connection with this tariff policy?
So, as I was talking about, US
Mhm.
letting manufacturing capacity to move out of US, and it was ready to run a trade deficit.
Right.
That means it will print more dollars and buy. Or uh, when they uh, when they buy foreign goods, where do they get money from?
Mhm.
So, for instance, if they buy oil from Saudi Arabia, so what does Saudi Arabia do with those dollars?
Mhm.
Either they will spend in US to buy property or live there, or they will buy US bonds. If they are buying US bonds, that means US debt is rising.
Okay.
So entire world, the cycle was US will buy, let's say, rice from India.
Mhm.
India gets dollars. To some extent, it will use those dollars to buy imports, and to some extent, it is going to buy bonds from you. China has accumulated US bond worth $1 trillion.
Okay.
What does this mean? That means the money is getting pumped back into US.
Mhm.
So debt kept on increasing. As this debt keeps on increasing till the time US can keep printing dollars, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But post COVID, US has realized that its ability to print dollars and get out of problem, it has reduced
Mhm.
because we saw very high inflation sticking in US economy for a long time. They could not weed it out. Usually for any country, if it prints its currency too much in comparison to amount of goods that they have been produced, so inflation is experienced. US did not face inflation because these dollars would spread out in rest of the world.
Mhm.
But now after COVID, they realize that probably they are also reaching a capacity and inflation hit them.
Right. And it did.
So one, their capacity to print dollar reduces because of fear of inflation. Number two, capacity to print dollar reduces because of fear of Chinese threat. Now these two things together lead to a situation where US would like to bring down the debt now.
Mhm.
So that's why we are seeing that it says that I'm not going to give money to UN, no NATO.
Mhm.
There are so many jobs. Doge has been created in order to bring in more efficiency in government functions. There is a big interest of the US government to reduce the debt now.
Okay. So this has to do a lot with reducing the debt as well, along with
Yeah,
defeating
yeah.
China.
You would have seen that there is a 90-day pause on tariffs now.
Mhm.
Why did this happen? This happened because one of the strategies that China has adopted to weaken US resolve regarding the tariffs is that they started selling the bonds. So when the supply of bonds US bonds will increase, their prices tend to come down.
Yeah.
That means people don't want to buy these
Mhm.
bonds. So if US government wants to float new bonds, it will have to pay higher interest rate.
Mhm.
If China starts selling more of these bonds, so interest rates will tend to go up, which will shake the capital markets in US.
Mhm.
And that's why US has press the pause button. They would have done that earlier also. They, as I said, it is more of negotiation rather than picking up a conflict.
Right.
Trump even today says that China should come to the negotiation table.
So do you think these 90 days are to, buy off that, like they are trying to buy off that time to negotiate?
Yeah, largely you can say that. It is definitely part of the game.
Okay. And now let's bring the spotlight back home. What do you think Donald Trump's new tariff policy has to do with India, or what does it mean for India? And can India be one of these countries who could, benefit the most out of it, or
Oh
are
yeah,
we
yeah.
also gonna?
Oh yeah, certainly. India stands to benefit a lot.
Okay.
Today's newspaper says that Shanghai Highly Group, which is one of the largest producers of compressors,
Right.
it was in talks with Voltas to manufacture compressors here in India. But in this joint venture, India was wanting to have majority stake, and China was not ready to give majority stake. But after the Trump's tariff have kicked in, Chinese companies are ready to have a joint venture with a minority stake. If China has put a ban on exports of rare earth metals, this is giving India a very big chance to develop this industry and benefit from it. The textiles industry, we see, is going to benefit a lot because all the competitors, Asian competitors, China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, their tariffs are much higher than India's. So this is just some of the examples which I am letting you know, but there are huge benefits for India in this entire play.
Okay. And we can say that it is, one of the best time for India to shine, because companies are already started to, shift from China. So are these specific sectors like electronics or APIs, can get the most benefit in terms of, because in these industries we compete very highly with China, and this is our time for, if we move fast and smart, then can we defeat China and become the largest exporter of electronics and APIs?
So idea is not about being largest exporter. In order to create that kind of manufacturing capacity, it will take a lot of time.
Okay.
But India will gain a lot in this
scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. And if sectors like healthcare or pharma are pulled into this tariff policy, what do you think can be the impact? These are some
So we
call
should
it
not
necessity goods in economics, right? So if these goods are hit, then what do you think can be the impact in the world trade?
idea once again, we should not generalize these tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is bilateral trade negotiations.
Right.
India is on the side of US. So US will create some US will create better policy deals for some countries, including India.
Okay.
So we may not see pharmaceutical industries being subjected to very high tariff.
Okay.
We also know that US gets cheap pharma from India.
Okay. Let's say we sideline pharma, but we talk about semiconductors. So what kind of trade disruptions?
Semiconductors, already it is, he has not put any tariffs on semiconductors.
Okay.
He has not put any tariff on semiconductors from China also.
Oh.
So there is a partial thing.
Right. So it's a very...
That's why I said, let's not, we tend to have a, common man tends to have a generalized view.
Right.
So it is not generalized view.
Mm-hmm.
It is, we have to see industry wise.
Okay. So it's a very thoughtful process of...
Very thoughtful, very meticulous.
Right. Makes sense.
So it seems as if Trump had this kind of discussions with Elon Musk and others. They knew that China will retaliate by selling the bonds. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to lower the debt. And that's why all this firing of government employees and cut down on aids is happening, so that US expenditure tends to come down and their borrowings also tend to come down.
Got it. Okay, let's just conclude this conversation with a quick rapid fire round. Are you ready? We'll want some very
Sure.
quick answers to this.
Sure.
One word to describe Trump's tariff policy.
Trump's tariff is turning point for India.
Okay. Which country could benefit the most out of it?
India,
Okay. Which sector do you think is at the most risk?
chemicals, gems and jewelries,
Okay. A historical event that reminds you of?
depression of 1930s.
Okay. One bold prediction about the global trade in 2025.
The global trade will for sure decline from 2 point. I think it should be somewhere around 2%, 2.25%, something like this in the next year. And India's GDP growth rate is projected at around 6.5, which could be even more than that. Maybe
Okay.
we reach around
So we
7.
are finally gonna hit the 5 trillion trade mark.
Oh, certainly.
Awesome. This was fun. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your
Thank you so much.